We're less than a month away from the start of fall camp, and even though Nebraska returns a ton of production on both sides of the ball, there's still plenty we don't know about the two deep on this roster. When you only win 5 games, that means change is coming, and with at least 7 position battles to watch this summer, there's still a lot of unknown about Matt Rule's team in year 2. How deep can they go at QB? Does a healthy running back room demote last year's leader? Will the transfers earn a starting role, or is the competition too stiff? Position battles should answer those questions, but with almost 80% of their production coming back, this roster is one of the most experienced in the entire country. So today, I'll give you my position group rankings, we'll go over the most intriguing battles to watch in fall camp, and I'll give you my list for guys who are in a prove-it situation going into this season. But what's up, guys? I'm Connor Hayden, and this is Corn Crazed. If you're a fan of Nebraska or the Big Ten, hit the subscribe button below and help us get closer to 22,000. And if you want my live reaction to the EA Sports College Football game when I play it for the very first time, hit the like button and help us get to 1,000. But now, let's get into it.
He's hit and set. He's taking a shot downfield, wide open end zone, caught, touchdown.
A couple weeks ago, I dropped my reaction to Phil Steele's magazine, and we talked about how Nebraska's position groups rank way higher going into this season than they did the year before. And then I got this DM on Instagram asking for my individual unit rankings. So I'm going to rank them 1 through 8, and I'm going to let you know if I think they're improved, if they took a step back, or if they just stayed the same. So at number 8, I'm going with the running backs, and here's my dilemma. Yes, they returned 3 former starters in Rahmir, Emmett Johnson, and Gabe Ervin, but Emmett didn't do enough to give us confidence that he'd win the job outright in fall camp. Rahmir got stuck behind Anthony Grant and A.J. Allen after starting in 2021, and Gabe Ervin's already had 2 season-ending injuries in the last 3 seasons. I don't question the potential since they've all been successful at one point, but until I see them all put a full season together and consistently play at a high level, I'm not buying into the hype. People fantasize about what Dowdell could be, but I don't know if he's going to be good enough to earn a significant amount of touches this year or if the other 3 keep him buried. So with this many guys returning, I'd usually say they're in a better position than they were last year, but losing Anthony Grant and not knowing how Gabe's going to look post-injury makes me think this room's equal to what they were last season. At 7, I've got the quarterbacks, and again, massive potential with a generational talent starting. Harburg returning as one of the best running QBs in the country, and Jalen Gramstad coming in as an NAIA All-American, but it's all just hype. Harburg's the most proven with a 3-2 record in the Big Ten, but his play style limits his availability since he takes so many hits as a runner. I'm excited because there's no way the QBs fumble the game away they did last year, and even if they're only a little bit better, it's probably worth 6 points a game. But this is a power ranking, and the only things we're going off of is a big spring game for Dylan, 3 Big Ten wins for Heinrich, and major success against inferior competition for Jalen. Better than last year, of course, but even if they added the backup from Nevada, it would have been an improvement here. 6 is the tight end room with Thomas Fidone leading the way as a pass catcher and the Nate Borkature-Luke Lindenmeyer combo pairing up as big-time run blockers. Rule raves about Fidone, and if you watch the Chasing 3 video that went up on the Nebraska Football YouTube channel, then you got to see how bad he wants to be great and live up to the expectations that he came in with. Carter Nelson's on campus now, and he's next in line to take over as the face of the room, but I'm not sure how much they'll use him out the gate since they're deep at receiver, and Borkature's caught multiple passes as a starter these last 2 seasons. Adding the number 2 tight end in the class and returning their top 3 who all made an impact at some point during Rule's first season, and there's no question they're going to be better than they were in 2023. 5th is the receiving corps that added 2 transfers, a true freshman, and returns 3 of their top 6 pass catchers from a year ago. The room's well-rounded. They've got the deep threat in Jalen Lloyd, who averaged 40 yards a catch and scored every other time he touched the ball. Jamal Banks is the big body, think Maurice Purify. Ja'Cory Barney and Isaiah Nair can be great after the catch. Alex Bullock and Malachi Coleman can get open downfield. From 5'9 to 6'4, they've got receivers for every scenario. And unlike last year, they're going to have a QB who can get the ball to them. Major improvement on the way. 4th is the offensive line, who made a huge jump after Rule came in and returns both their starting tackles, their starting left guard, and Ben Scott at center. The backups are all a year more experienced. Micah Mazuka coming in after starting at both Baylor and Florida gives them an instant rotator, if not a starter, to replace Nuri Nuili. And a full year under their new strength coach means they'll be in even better Big Ten shape than last season. Two of the top 5 recruits in the most recent class both play on the line, and I don't expect them to play much right away, but the commitment to finally build in the trenches says this unit's going to continue trending up. In third, I've got the linebackers, who lost Nick Henrich and Luke Reimer, but added 2 transfers who can play right away. The 2 deep stacked, you've got John Bullock, Javen Wright, MJ Sherman, Princewell Umami-Ellen, Stephon Thompson, and Makai Bayer. Every one of those guys has started, and the best part is that 5 of them never played a significant role in college until last year. There was a learning curve. It was the practice run, and now they're all set to look even better with all of that experience under their belt. Losing 2 of the biggest leaders in the room makes you question who steps up with John Bullock to be the voice, but the worst case scenario is they match last season's production. Second are the DBs, led by 2 of the 3 best players on the entire team. Isaac Gifford's going into year 3 as a starter after leading the team with 86 tackles, 6.5 for loss, and 8 passes defended. And the only guy who was better against the pass was Tommy Hill, who batted 9 and intercepted 4. Quentin Newsome and Omar Brown were huge losses, but Rule went to the portal and he grabbed Bly Hill and Syer Wright, who are both proven starters that'll play right away. We'll talk about the corners and the safeties in the position battle segment soon, but we saw that Tony White likes to rotate the DBs a lot, and having 7 former starters to play 5 position gives him plenty to work with. The biggest win here is Tommy Hill. They expected him to be a star, but it took 6 games for him to figure out how he fit in. And now that he knows, the question we've got to ask is, how high is his ceiling? And at number 1, the position group I rated dead last 1 year ago is the defensive line. They're top heavy with the tackle bodies being Nash Hutmaker and Ty Robinson, but on the edge, Jamari Butler, Cam Lenhart, and James Williams could all start at other Big Ten schools. And they lost some depth, but the top 5 are all in a better position now since they understand the defense and they know their assignments. Last offseason, Ty was dealing with injuries that held him out of winter conditioning, but these past few months, he's been at full strength, and if he can just improve a little, he's going to be a day 2 draft pick. But he's not the only one with NFL potential, and because NFL bodies are what it takes to win in the Big Ten, this unit earns the top spot. Last time I made this video, I gave you my list for 5 guys who had a lot of hype at one point, but hadn't lived up to their potential yet, or were kind of in a do or die spot, because if they didn't perform in 2023, they probably already hit their ceiling. Last year's list was Thomas Fidone, who played pretty well given the QB issue, Ramir Johnson, who never had a chance since he got hurt early, Tommy Hill, who took off in the back half of the season, Arik Gilbert, one of the biggest recruiting busts of all time, and Teddy Prohaska, who earned the starting left tackle job. But now I've got 4 more who have this year to prove that they weren't just a one-hit wonder. We'll start with Tristan Alvano, the record-breaking kicker from Westside who won the job as a true freshman, nailed a 55-yarder against Purdue, and showed us a glimpse of how great he can be. The problem is, even though he made every extra point, he was only 60% on field goals, and some of them were kicks that he easily should have made. The message this offseason was that this team's chasing 3. They lost too many games by 3 points, and while that doesn't all fall on Tristan, there were multiple games where he could have changed the outcome if he would have made his kicks. I can't judge him for struggling as a true freshman because it's a major jump and the pressure's no joke, but he's got to get it together going forward. Isaiah Nayer's walking into the perfect situation. He's got a QB who can throw it, and none of the receivers in the room have enough rapport with Raiola to be considered his favorite target in the pressure scenario. He had an entire year to chill out at Texas and get 100% healthy after his injury, but it's still a little weird to me that he didn't get any playing time there last year. Was he not as quick as before? Was the room too stacked? Was the jump from the Mountain West to Power 5 football too big for him? We're 2 years out from his 900-yard season at Wyoming, and after this much time off, it's time to show if he can be one of the top receivers in the country like he was before he transferred. Gabe Ervin's been one of the unluckiest players on the entire roster. He earned the starting job as a true freshman, but he tore his ACL in the 4th game. Off an injury, he couldn't overtake A.J. Allen or Anthony Grant in 2022, and once he did earn the starting spot back, he only made it 3 games before another season-ending injury. Now's the time. He's at his peak. He's a 4th-year junior who fits perfectly on a team who wants a bell cow back to bang on Big Ten defenses at the end of games. He'll either come in and prove he was meant to be Nebraska's #1 back this entire time, or the injuries are going to catch up and it'll always be a story of what could have been. Last is Stephon Thompson, the linebacker transfer from Syracuse, and he's another true freshman phenom who earned a starting role out the gate and had a record-setting first season. He finished second on the team in tackles when Tony White was Syracuse's DC, and after playing in 35 games with 20 starts, 166 tackles, and 10.5 sacks, he's the perfect guy to replace what they lost in the linebacker room. So far, it's been pretty quiet regarding where he fits in, and the only thing I heard was that he wasn't in football shape when he got to Lincoln. Being a beast in the ACC is one thing, but he came to Nebraska to develop under Tony White and hopefully find a path to the NFL. So if he wants to make that happen, he's got to be ready to perform out the gate since this D's going to need him. Before we get into the position battles, I want to shout out the Character Chronicles for being the sponsor for all of our off-season content. I haven't talked to Adam about it yet, but I'll make sure to bring him on before the season starts to get some of his hot takes and predictions for how he thinks things are going to go. And if you want more Nebraska or Big Ten content, he's back to posting regularly pretty soon here. So make sure to head over to my description box below or just type in Character Chronicles into the search box above and subscribe to his channel there. Now let's get into some position battles, because even though there are a bunch of returning starters, injuries and new additions means there's a chance we see some spots get shaken up. So let's start this off with safety. They'll only have 2 starters, but the 3 guys battling for the job are all proven defenders. Start with Malcolm Hartzog. He started at corner as a true freshman, then last year played both corner and safety after Singleton got hurt in the Michigan game. He's the least experienced at the spot, but he's the most experienced in terms of total games played, and he hasn't had the injury issues the other 2 dealt with. Marquise Buford Jr. got hurt in the Wisconsin game a couple years ago, so he missed most of last season. But in the 4 games he did play, he finished with 18 tackles, 3 for a loss, and a sack. But most importantly, he didn't look out of place. He was ready for the moment, and he looked as good as he did the year before. Deshaun Singleton made a huge impact when the new staff took over, and he even earned a single digit before being named the starter. He looked like one of the best players on the entire D in his first 4 games, and he's got at least 3 inches on the other 2. So he looks the part size-wise, but I think the biggest question is, how long is it going to take for the staff to trust that he's ready to go? When you've got 2 other experienced options who aren't coming off an injury, I think that might make it harder for him to break back into the front line. At running back, the situation couldn't be better and more confusing at the exact same time. The offense is changing. Gabe was the obvious number 1 for what they did a year ago, but Ramir's got to have the edge now in the new system. Emmett's got the edge in terms of last year's production and offseason development since he's been healthy, but he's a lot younger, and I don't know how much more physically developed he is or isn't than the other 2. I'd expect a rotation, but somebody's got to be the face. History says it's going to be Ramir since he's proven to be the best receiving back in the room. But Emmett's dynamic, and Gabe's a physically gifted machine who's desperate for his opportunity after 2 early exits. Alvano's the starting kicker right now, but Nebraska adding John Hull from Iowa Western makes you think Rule's not going to settle for missed 40-yarders. Remember, Alvano was 2 of 7 between 40 and 49 yards. That's ugly when a majority of his kicks come at that range. They don't lose by 7, they lose games by 3, and Alvano looks shaky in the spring game, which makes you think maybe the pressure isn't something he knows how to deal with quite yet. Even if John Hull's max is 49 yards and he doesn't have the ceiling Alvano does, if he comes out and makes the ones that matter, that might be all it takes for him to steal the job. We're going to assume Dylan's QB1, but what about his backup? Matt Rule talked to Joel Klatt the other day about how important it is to have 3 QBs to get you through a long season, and it'd be dumb not to think Gramstad or Harburg are going to have to play at some point along the way. Let's take out my argument that Harburg needs to be a situational athlete and focus on who the better backup option would be. Gramstad's a proven passer with great athleticism, and even though he hasn't played in a Big Ten game, the assumption is he won't be a turnover machine. Harburg struggled getting the ball downfield, and he can't be a single threat anymore now that teams know his game. He either took a big step forward as a passer with better QB training this spring, or this one's a serious battle to watch since this is the second most important role on the entire team right behind QB1. Bly Hill getting hurt in the spring opened up the conversation. Who starts opposite Tommy Hill? Jeremiah Charles played a lot in the spring game, and it sounds like he's one of the best athletes on the entire team, and he has a really high ceiling. But Syer Wright transferring in from USC after starting multiple games really throws a wrench in here. And what about Dwight Boodle? He only played in 3 games before he got injured and missed the rest of his true freshman season. But his brother was a 4-year starter at Nebraska before he went pro, and there's a reason this staff liked Dwight so much. Wright's technically got the edge with the experience from USC, but I'm guessing he's got some bad habits since their DC was so bad, and taking this much time off football might mean he's got some ground to make up when it comes to conditioning. Hill should be back by the time conference games start, but in the meantime, somebody's got to step up to lock down the opposite side. I think when Micah Mazuka transferred in with all that starting experience, we all just assumed he was a lock to start. But after he was still trying to find his place, it makes me think Henry Lutovsky and Justin Evans might have the leg up. I think Justin Evans gets the start at left tackle since he was already playing there last season. But what about the other side? Lutovsky started 2 games after Nuili went down, and now that he's entering his junior year, it's prime time in terms of offensive line development and physical shape all coming together. The staff wanted Mazuka bad, but they missed on him the first time when he chose Florida. So this time, they made sure to lock him down. And the question is, did they see him as a day one starter, or was he a project they took over who would rotate until he was ready to step up and lead? And last, we've got to talk about kick returner, because like I said in my last video, the return game needs to improve, and they've got to give the offense better field position. Think back to last season when they played Minnesota, and Ramir Johnson returned one inside the 35, and 2 plays later, Nebraska put 6 on the board. A big return can change the entire game. I mentioned Ramir here because he's one of the guys I'd expect to challenge for the spot again since he had the role opening week last season. Emmett Johnson's another candidate depending on how much he's going to play in the backfield. But if you watch the spring game, it's really hard to ignore Ja'Cory Barney. That dude looked the part. He has the speed, he has the vision, the path is there. Start off as the kick returner, earn your way into the starting rotation at receiver, and 2 years from now, we could be looking at Dylan's Heisman running mate. We're still a few weeks away from learning more about how the depth chart's shaping up and who's leading their unit. But for now, I'm just doing my best to piece together what we know so far, and I'm preparing to start making some predictions once we get into fall camp. But I want to know what you think, so let me know in the comments below. Which is the most underrated position group on my list? If you had to name a starting running back today, who would you go with? And who's your number 1 player that needs to prove it in 2024? I'm going with Tristan Alvano because when you've got all that talent and can't perform under pressure, the talent you've got won't get you very far. But that's all I've got for today. So until next time, thank you for being here, and I will see you in the next one. Go Big Red.